I was standing in my garage, organizing tools I'd collected over 40 years as an engineer, when my phone buzzed. Nancy Martinez, my financial advisor for the past 15 years. I almost didn't answer. I'd just spoken with her office 2 weeks ago about my quarterly statements. Everything was fine, stable, secure. Richard, I need you to stop what you're doing and call me immediately. Do not, and I mean do not, sign anything your son brings over today. My blood went cold. Nancy, what are you talking about? Brian's coming by? He called my office this morning. Tried to get information about your accounts. When my assistant said she couldn't discuss client details without you present, he got aggressive. Said he had power of attorney and demanded full access. She paused. Richard, I pulled your file. You never gave him power of attorney. I would have that documentation. I sank onto my workbench, the wrench I'd been holding clattering to the concrete floor. There must be some mistake. Brian wouldn't. Richard, I've been doing this for 23 years. I know the signs. I'm texting you my personal cell number. Call me in 1 hour. If I don't hear from you, I'm driving to your house myself. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, trying to process what she'd just said. Brian? My son? The boy I'd taught to ride a bike, helped through college, stood beside when his mother died. The same Brian who'd been so attentive these past 6 months, calling every Sunday, inviting me to dinner, asking about my health. My mind raced back through recent conversations. 3 weeks ago, Brian had asked me to sign some routine paperwork for my Medicare supplemental insurance. Said it was just an update, that everyone over 65 had to file it. I'd been distracted, watching my granddaughter Emma's robotics competition on video chat, and I'd signed without reading carefully. Had I been that careless? That stupid? I walked back into my house, the same house where Margaret and I had raised Brian, where we'd celebrated 37 Christmases before cancer took her 5 years ago. The morning light streamed through the kitchen windows, illuminating framed photos on the wall. Brian's graduation, his wedding to Michelle, Emma's birth, my workshop projects, Margaret's garden, everything I'd built, everything I had left of the life we'd shared. And my own son was trying to take it from me? No, I had to be wrong. Nancy must have misunderstood. Brian was a pharmaceutical sales manager, made good money. He didn't need mine. We'd had our disagreements over the years. He thought I worked too much, didn't approve of my hobbies, wanted me to slow down and act my age, but this was beyond comprehension. I picked up my phone to call Brian directly, then stopped. Nancy's tone had been urgent, specific. She'd said not to sign anything today. That meant Brian was planning to come over today, with documents, expecting me to sign. The doorbell rang. I checked my watch. 10:47 a.m. I walked to the front window and peered through the curtain. Brian's silver Lexus sat in my driveway. He was early. Through the frosted glass of my front door, I could see his silhouette, tall, confident. My son. I opened the door. Hey, Dad. Brian's smile was broad, easy. He carried a leather portfolio under one arm and held a white paper bag in his other hand. Brought those blueberry muffins you like from Sullivan's Bakery. Thought we could have coffee and catch up. You didn't mention you were coming by today. I kept my voice neutral, not moving aside to let him in. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance? Calculation? Before the smile returned. Spontaneous visit. That's still allowed, isn't it? Can I come in? It's freezing out here. I stepped back, and he brushed past me into the living room. He'd always been tall, 6'2", but lately he seemed to carry himself differently, more aggressive, like the pharmaceutical reps I'd seen at Margaret's doctor's offices. Always pushing, always closing. Where's Emma? I asked. He usually brought my granddaughter when he visited. She'd just started her senior year at Riverside High. Brilliant kid, top of her class in math and computer science. Reminded me of myself at that age. School. Brian set the portfolio on my coffee table too carefully, I noticed, like it contained something precious or dangerous. Actually, Dad, I wanted to talk to you privately about your situation. My situation? He gestured vaguely. You're living alone in this big house. It's a lot of maintenance, a lot of stairs. At your age, I'm 64. not 90. And after what happened last month. What happened last month? I folded my arms. Brian's jaw tightened. You forgot Emma's birthday. You've never forgotten her birthday. That hit me like a punch to the gut. He was right. October 15th. I'd been so caught up in a consulting project I still did engineering work remotely for my old firm that the day had completely slipped past. I'd called Emma 2 days later, mortified, and she'd laughed it off, said she knew I'd been busy. But I'd felt terrible. One mistake doesn't mean, and you left the stove on. Michelle smelled gas when she came by to drop off dinner. That was once, and I caught it. Dr. Patterson says you missed your last 2 checkups. I blinked. How do you know about my doctor's appointments? Because someone has to keep track. Dad. Brian opened the portfolio and pulled out a thick stack of papers. Look, I've been talking to some people, professionals, about the best way to handle this transition. What transition? Meadowbrook Senior Living. It's not a nursing home, it's an active adult community. Independent living with support services. You'd have your own apartment, meals provided, activities, medical staff on-site 24/7. Michelle and I went to tour it last week. It's really nice, top-rated. My heart was pounding now. I'm not going to a nursing home. It's not a nursing home, Brian repeated patiently, like he was talking to a child. It's for your safety, and I've already completed the application. You just need to sign here, here, and here. He pointed to flag tabs in the document stack. This transfers the house into a family trust, so we can sell it to cover the costs. Absolutely not. And this gives me medical power of attorney so I can make healthcare decisions. Brian, stop. And this is just the financial power of attorney we discussed, so I can manage your accounts and pay your bills. I said no. My voice came out harder than I'd intended. I'm not signing anything. Brian's mask slipped. For just a moment, I saw raw anger flash across his face. Then it smoothed out again, but his voice had an edge. Dad, be reasonable. You're not getting any younger. Things are only going to get harder. We're trying to help you. By putting me in a home and taking control of everything I own? By making sure you're taken care of. Brian stood up, towering over me. Do you know what it's like watching you rattling around in this house alone? Watching you forget things, lose track of appointments. Mom would want someone looking after you. There it was, the Margaret card. He always played it when he wanted something. Your mother would want me to live my life on my own terms. Your mother would want you to be safe. Brian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression tightened further. Look, I have to get back to work. Just think about what I said. I'll leave these papers here. Look them over. I'll come back Sunday for dinner, and we can sign everything then. Michelle's making pot roast. He stood, grabbed his phone, and headed for the door. Then he turned back. And Dad, maybe don't mention this conversation to anyone just yet. People might not understand. They might try to confuse you or take advantage. You know how people get when money's involved. The door closed behind him. I stood there, shaking, staring at the papers he'd left, scattered across my coffee table. The words swam before my eyes. Power of attorney, irrevocable trust, transfer of assets. My phone buzzed. Nancy, did you call me? Are you okay? I hit dial. Richard? Nancy's voice was sharp with concern. What happened? I told her everything. About Brian showing up with papers. About Meadowbrook Senior Living. About him already claiming he had power of attorney. Jesus Christ, Nancy breathed. Richard, listen to me very carefully. Do not sign anything. Don't even touch those papers. I'm coming over right now with my colleague Frank. He's an estate attorney. We're 30 minutes away. Nancy, I don't understand. Why would Brian do this? There was a long pause. Richard, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but 3 months ago, your son came to my office, alone. He spun some story about you having memory problems, said you'd asked him to help manage your finances. He wanted me to set up automatic transfers to a joint account. When I said I'd need to speak with you first, he got pushy. Said I was making things difficult. I shut it down, told him to come back with you if you really wanted to make changes. He never did. 3 months ago? My mind raced. 3 months ago was right after Emma started her senior year. Right after Brian had started being so much more attentive. Sunday phone calls, dinner invitations, asking about my health. It hadn't been concern. It had been reconnaissance. Nancy, what do I do? You sit tight. Don't answer the door for anyone but me. We're on our way. Nancy arrived 28 minutes later with Frank Chen, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s, who immediately started photographing Brian's paperwork with his phone. This is sophisticated, Frank muttered, flipping through pages. Very sophisticated. This isn't something your son drafted himself. He's got a lawyer involved. Probably one who specializes in elder law, ironically, the kind who usually protects seniors from exactly this kind of thing. What exactly is this kind of thing? I asked. Frank looked at me over his reading glasses. Financial elder abuse. Specifically, he's attempting to establish guardianship through the back door. These papers, if you'd signed them, would have given him complete control over your medical care, your finances, and your property. The irrevocable trust language is particularly nasty. Once assets are in that, they're nearly impossible to get back. But I'm not incompetent. I'm not senile. I still work, for God's sake. Doesn't matter. The system isn't set up to protect people like you. It's set up to protect people who genuinely need help. Once someone has POA and files paperwork claiming you're incapacitated, the burden of proof shifts to you to prove you're competent. And if you're already in a facility, isolated from support systems, that becomes very difficult. Nancy sat down beside me on the couch. Richard, I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about the answer. Has Brian been pressuring you about anything else? Any other routine paperwork? Any requests for account numbers, passwords, safe combinations? I thought back. 3 weeks ago, he asked me to sign Medicare paperwork. I was distracted, watching Emma's robotics meet online, and I just signed. Frank's head snapped up. Do you still have copies? I think so, he said to file them. I went to my home office and pulled out my medical folder. There it was, clipped neatly behind my actual Medicare card. Frank examined it, his face darkening. Richard, this isn't Medicare paperwork. This is a medical power of attorney form. Incomplete, he needed witnesses, which is probably why he didn't file it yet, but your signature is here. He was planning to complete it later, forge the witnesses, and file it. The room tilted. I sat down hard. How long has he been planning this? My voice sounded distant, not like my own. Based on what Nancy told me about his first attempt 3 months ago, at least that long, probably longer. Frank started taking more photos. But here's the good news. He hasn't filed anything yet. He's still in the setup phase. That gives us time to protect you. Protect me from my own son. The words tasted like ash. Nancy squeezed my hand. Richard, I'm so sorry. I know this is devastating, but we need to act fast. Frank was already pulling out his laptop. First, we revoke any powers of attorney you may have inadvertently granted. Second, we file paperwork explicitly stating you're mentally competent and do not wish Brian to have any legal authority over your affairs. Third, we set up safeguards on all your accounts, passwords changed, two-factor authentication, verbal verification required for any major transactions. Fourth, we document everything in case Brian files anything with the courts. He wouldn't actually file, I started, then stopped. 3 months of planning, forged medical documents, nursing home tours without my knowledge. He would, wouldn't he? Richard, people do terrible things when money's involved, Nancy said quietly. And I looked up property records during my drive over. Your house is worth $890,000. Your investment accounts with me total $1.2 million. Your pension and Social Security add up to significant monthly income. You're worth over $2 million. That's a powerful motivator. $2 million. I'd never thought of it that way. It was just my life. The house Margaret and I bought for $180,000 in 1988 paid off over 30 years. Retirement savings from 4 decades of work. Margaret's life insurance. My pension. To Brian, it wasn't his father's security. It was an asset to be liquidated. Just like Tom in that story Emma had told me about from one of those online channels she watched. Except that was fiction. This was my life. What about Emma? I asked suddenly. She doesn't know about any of this, does she? Brian wouldn't involve his daughter in. My phone buzzed. Emma. Grandpa, can I come over after school? Need to talk. It's important. Don't tell Dad. I showed the message to Nancy and Frank. Frank nodded slowly. Your granddaughter may have information. But Richard, be careful. If she knows something that implicates her father, she's in a difficult position. She's 17. She's still a minor living in his house. Which is exactly why we need to be very careful how we handle this. Emma arrived at 4:30 p.m., her Honda Civic pulling into my driveway with its usual slight rattle. She was tall like her father, but had Margaret's eyes, clear blue, sharp with intelligence. She wore her Riverside High robotics team jacket and carried her laptop bag. She froze when she saw Nancy and Frank in my living room. Grandpa? What's going on? Emma, sweetheart. These are friends of mine. Nancy is my financial advisor. Frank is a lawyer. We're discussing something important, and you said you needed to talk to me. Is everything okay? Emma's eyes darted between us. Then she seemed to make a decision. She closed the front door, locked it, and set her backpack down. No, everything's not okay. Dad's been acting really weird lately, and I think... She swallowed hard. I think he's planning something bad. Something involving you. Frank leaned forward. Emma, I'm going to be very direct with you. We already know your father has been attempting to gain legal control over your grandfather's finances and medical care. What we don't know is how much you know, or how you know it. The color drained from Emma's face. Oh God, it's real. I thought maybe I was being paranoid or misunderstanding. Start from the beginning, I said gently. What did you see? Emma sank onto the couch, looking suddenly much younger than 17. It started about 4 months ago. Dad came home from work, really stressed. He was on the phone in his office with the door closed, but I could hear him. He was talking about money, something about a bad investment, losing a lot, needing to fix this before Michelle finds out. I figured it was work stuff. You know? He's always stressed about sales quotas. She pulled her laptop out. But then he started asking weird questions about you. Whether you seemed forgetful, whether you had trouble with technology, whether you were keeping up with bills. And he kept pushing me to notice things like when you forgot my birthday. He made this huge deal about it to Mom, even though I told him you'd just been busy and called me 2 days later. The stove incident? I asked. Yeah. Mom came over to drop off casserole, and Dad had literally told her to check the stove. Like he wanted her to find something wrong. The pilot light was out. It happens sometimes in old stoves, but Dad acted like you'd almost burned down the house. Frank was typing rapidly on his laptop. This is textbook. He's been building a narrative, creating evidence of incompetence. What else? Emma's hands shook as she opened her laptop. 2 weeks ago, I couldn't find my AP calculus notes. I thought maybe I'd left them on Dad's computer. We share a cloud drive for family stuff. When I logged in to check, I saw a folder labeled RH Estate. RH Richard Holloway. You. She turned the laptop around. On screen was a detailed spreadsheet. Property values, account balances, estimates of my monthly expenses, calculations of how much money could be freed up if subject is relocated to managed care facility. I felt sick. There's more, Emma whispered. He's been emailing with some lawyer named Douglas Pritchard. They're discussing intervention timeline and optimal filing window. Dad wrote, her voice broke. He wrote that he needed to act before the old man starts giving money away to charities or girlfriend or whoever. He thinks I have a girlfriend? I would have laughed if it wasn't so horrible. Grandpa, you've been taking Margaret Chen from the senior center to doctor's appointments. Dad saw you two at lunch last month. He's convinced you're dating and that she's going to manipulate you into changing your will. Margaret Chen, 82 years old. My wife's best friend now widowed herself. She didn't drive anymore, so I'd been helping her out. That was it. But Brian had twisted it into something sinister. Nancy looked at Frank. This is worse than I thought. He's not just opportunistic, he's paranoid and desperate. Can I see those emails? Frank asked Emma. She hesitated, glancing at me. I kind of broke into his account. Used a password cracker program I learned in computer science club. Is that illegal? Am I going to get in trouble? Frank smiled grimly. Right now, let's focus on protecting your grandfather. We'll worry about the legality of evidence later. Can you forward everything to me? Emma sent the files. As Frank read through them, his expression grew darker. Richard, your son is $340,000 in debt. Bad stock trades. He's been hiding it from his wife. He sees your assets as the solution. And according to these emails, he's planning to file guardianship paperwork next week, right after Thanksgiving. He wants you confused and emotional from the holiday. Next week. I looked at the calendar on my wall. Today was November 19th. Thanksgiving was November 23rd. So what do we do? I asked. Frank closed his laptop. We beat him to the punch. Tomorrow morning, I file declarations establishing your mental competency, signed by your doctor. I also file explicit revocations of any power of attorney. We put alerts on all your financial accounts. And we prepare for him to challenge it because he will. He's going to be so angry, Emma whispered. At me, at Grandpa, at everyone. I looked at my granddaughter, smart, brave, sitting here with evidence that could destroy her father's plans. Emma, you don't have to be involved in this. You could have just stayed quiet. No, I couldn't. Tears streamed down her face. Grandpa, you're the only person who's ever encouraged me, who believed I could be an engineer like you, who helped me with my robotics projects and taught me to solve problems. Dad's always said I should focus on practical careers, like marketing or healthcare administration. But you told me I could do anything. She wiped her eyes. And besides, what Dad's trying to do is wrong. Mom doesn't even know about his debt. He's lying to all of us. I can't just sit there and watch him destroy everything. Nancy handed Emma a tissue. You're incredibly brave. But Emma, we need to be honest with you about what happens next. Your father is going to know you were involved. There's no way around it. I know. Emma's voice was small but steady. That's why I brought my stuff. She pointed to her backpack. My birth certificate, social security card, passport, bank account info, everything important. I turn 18 in 6 months. Until then, she looked at me. Is it okay if I stay here sometimes? I have a friend whose parents said I could stay with them too if I need to. My throat tightened. Sweetheart, of course. Always. Frank made several phone calls. By 6 p.m., I had an emergency appointment with Dr. Patricia Morrison, my physician of 12 years, scheduled for 8 a.m. the next morning. Frank had already sent her a summary of the situation. That night, Emma and I ordered pizza and sat in my living room, the same room where I'd taught her to play chess when she was 7, where we'd built model rockets when she was 10, where we'd celebrated her acceptance into the National Honor Society last year. I'm sorry, I told her. You shouldn't have to choose between your father and what's right. You didn't make me choose. He did. Emma picked at her pizza crust. Grandpa, can I ask you something? When did you know Dad wasn't good? I thought about that. I don't think your father is evil, Emma. I think he's scared and desperate, and that made him willing to do things he might not otherwise do. But that doesn't excuse it. Being scared doesn't justify hurting the people who love you. Do you think he ever actually loved us? Or were we always just assets to him? I think he loves you, in his own way. But some people's love is conditional. It depends on what you can do for them. Real love, the kind your grandmother had, the kind I hope you find that's unconditional. It doesn't require anything in return. Emma nodded slowly, then changed the subject to her robotics team's upcoming competition. But I could see the pain in her eyes. She'd lost her father today. Not to death, but to something worse, to discovering who he really was. The next morning, Dr. Morrison gave me a thorough examination. Cognitive tests, memory assessments, balance and coordination checks. Blood work to rule out any underlying conditions that might affect mental function. Richard, she said finally, reviewing her notes. You're sharp as a tack. Your memory is excellent for your age. Your physical health is actually better than most 64-year-olds I see. Your son's claims are completely baseless. She printed out a formal medical letter and handed it to Frank. If Brian tries to claim incompetence, you bring him to my office, and I'll tell him exactly what I think of his little scheme." By noon, Frank had filed all the necessary paperwork with the county clerk's office. My accounts were locked down. Any major transaction would require in-person verification with photo ID and verbal confirmation of 3 security questions only I knew the answers to. We'd done it. I was protected, but Brian didn't know that yet. Sunday dinner arrived. Brian texted that morning, "See you at 5, bringing papers, be ready to sign." The arrogance of it made my blood boil. Frank advised me to go. Let him show his cards. We'll be recording everything legally, in your own home. Let him make his pitch, then shut him down. At 4:45 p.m., Emma and I were waiting. She'd set up her phone discreetly on the bookshelf, angled to capture the living room. Frank and Nancy were in my office, with the door cracked, listening. Brian arrived exactly at 5 p.m., Michelle beside him carrying a casserole dish. "Where's Emma?" Michelle asked immediately, noticing her car in the driveway. "Emma's here. We need to have a family meeting." I kept my voice level. Brian's eyes narrowed. "Dad, we talked about this. No need for drama. Just sign the papers and—" "I'm not signing anything, Brian. Ever." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Michelle looked between us, confused. "What papers?" "Brian, what's going on?" "Nothing, honey. Just routine estate planning. Dad's being stubborn." "Estate planning?" Michelle set down the casserole. "We have a pot roast in the car. What is this really about?" "Your husband," I said quietly, "has been trying to take control of my medical care, my finances, and my home. He forged medical documents. He's been building a false case that I'm incompetent. He's planning to have me declared unable to care for myself and move to a nursing home so he can sell my house and liquidate my assets." Michelle's mouth fell open. She turned to Brian. "Tell me that's not true." "Dad's confused. He's been forgetting things, and I'm just trying to help." "Don't." Emma stepped out from the kitchen, her phone in her hand. "Don't lie to Mom. I know about your debt. I saw the emails with Douglas Pritchard. I know everything." Brian's face went white, then red. "You went through my private files? You were trying to steal from Grandpa. He's my father. That money was always going to be mine eventually. I'm just managing the transition." "Transition?" I stood up. "I'm 64 years old and in perfect health. I could live another 30 years. This isn't about managing anything. This is about you deciding you want my money now, and you're willing to destroy my independence to get it. You don't understand." Brian's voice took on a desperate edge. "I made some mistakes, bad investments. If Michelle finds out—" He stopped, realizing what he'd just admitted. Michelle's voice was ice. "If I find out what, Brian?" "Nothing. I handled it. By stealing from my father-in-law? It's not stealing. It's my inheritance." "No," I said firmly. "It's not. It's my life savings, my security, my choice what to do with it. And right now, I choose to revoke any trust I ever had in you." Frank and Nancy emerged from my office. Brian's eyes widened. "Who the hell are you?" Frank handed him a business card. "Frank Chen, estate attorney. Your father has revoked all powers of attorney, established his mental competency with his physician, and secured all his financial accounts. If you attempt to file any guardianship petitions, we'll fight them with documented evidence of your attempted financial abuse." Brian looked at the papers Frank handed him, then at Emma, then at me. Something crumbled in his face. "Dad, I needed help. I was drowning. You don't understand the pressure. Then you should have asked me. Honestly, I might have helped you. But you didn't ask. You tried to take. And you tried to take everything." "Brian," Michelle's voice shook, "how much debt are we talking about?" He didn't answer. "How much?" "100,000 yuan." Michelle grabbed her purse. "Emma, get your things. We're leaving." "Michelle, wait." "No, we're done. I'll be at my sister's. My lawyer will be in touch." She looked at me, tears in her eyes. "Richard, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." Brian stood there, watching his wife and daughter walk out. Then he turned to me, and for just a moment, I saw genuine anguish in his eyes. "I'm your son. I know. And that makes this so much worse." He left without another word. In the silence that followed, I sank onto my couch. Emma sat beside me, and I put my arm around her. She leaned against my shoulder, just like she used to when she was little. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we move forward. You finish your senior year, apply to colleges, build your life." And I looked around my living room, at the home Margaret and I built together. I keep living mine, on my own terms. Frank started gathering his papers. "Richard, I'll file a restraining order if you want, but I don't think Brian will be back. The debt, the divorce, the public exposure, he's got enough problems. And legally, you're locked down tight. There's nothing he can do. No restraining order," I decided. He's still Emma's father. Maybe someday, after he gets help and makes amends, maybe someday we can have some kind of relationship. But on my terms, with boundaries, and only if he proves he's changed. "That's generous," Nancy said quietly. "It's realistic. Family is complicated, and I refuse to let his choices destroy what's left of mine." 3 months later, I attended Emma's robotics team competition. She won second place in the state finals with a robot that could sort recycling using AI recognition. Her scholarship applications were solid. MIT, Stanford, and Carnegie Mellon all made their preliminary interest lists. Michelle had filed for divorce. Brian was in financial counseling and attending therapy. We exchanged polite emails occasionally. He was working 3 jobs to pay down his debt. He'd lost the house. Michelle took what equity remained in the settlement. I never did find out exactly what pushed Brian to that breaking point. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was just the gradual erosion of his values under financial pressure. But I learned something important. The people who claim to love you the most can sometimes be the ones who hurt you the deepest. But I also learned that integrity doesn't have to be taught, sometimes it's innate. Emma didn't learn her moral compass from her father. She found it herself, and when the moment came to choose between family loyalty and doing what was right, she chose right. That gives me hope. I still live in my house, still do consulting work, still take Margaret Chen to her doctor's appointments, and yes, we're friends. Nothing more. But even if we were dating, it would be nobody's business but ours. I revised my will. Emma gets the house and most of the estate, with provisions that she can't access it until she graduates college. A trust fund for her education, completely protected. Donations to the robotics program at her high school, to the Alzheimer's Association in Margaret's memory, and to a local organization that fights elder financial abuse. Brian is in there too. $50,000 when I die, with one condition: he must complete financial counseling and remain current on all his debts for 2 consecutive years. It's enough to help him, but not enough to bail him out of consequences. And a letter to be read after I'm gone, explaining why, not with anger, but with the truth, that love means wanting someone to become their best self, not enabling their worst impulses. Some nights, I sit in my garage with my tools, working on small projects, and I think about how close I came to losing everything. Not just the money or the house, but my independence, my dignity, my choice in how I spend my final years. All because my son saw me not as a person, but as an estate to be liquidated. But I also think about Emma, pulling into my driveway with her laptop full of evidence, scared and brave all at once, choosing truth over easy lies, choosing me over her father. That choice saved us both. And maybe, someday, it will save Brian too. Maybe he'll look at his daughter's courage and realize what he lost. Maybe he'll become the man he should have been all along. But that's his journey, not mine. My journey is here, in this house, with my tools and my memories and my granddaughter's acceptance letters on my refrigerator, living on my own terms, making my own choices. At 64, I'm not done yet, not by a long shot. And when my time does come, whenever that is, whether it's next year or 30 years from now, I'll go knowing I didn't let fear or pressure or family obligation rob me of my autonomy. I'll go knowing I chose dignity over convenience, that I chose truth over easy peace, that I chose to trust a 17-year-old girl who had more integrity than a 40-year-old man. And that choice made all the difference.